Hello agents and welcome to Shadow Gaming. We got some big news about the loot overhaul on the state of the game today for January 15th that I would like to go over. So let's get this started. Alright agents, here are the top topics of this video and what was said on the state of the game. We got gear overhaul, gear 2.0, all gear rebooted, new items, new content, new power cap, old gear converted retroactively, all photos shown in the state of the game are a work in progress, and every stat can roll max at the same time, and damage to elites has been removed. No optimization station in the cards yet. Alright, first up, priority alerts with Frederick Thylander. This is the guy that you want on the state of the game, along with Hamish, and I always forget the other guy's name, sorry. These are the key topics that Thylander discussed on the state of game for today, January 15th, 2020. They're listening to our feedback and taking advice. Reboot of the gear game, so gear 2.0, which comes out after episode 3, and I will heavily elaborate on this in a few minutes later on in the video. Spending too much time in the inventory screen and not playing the game. They have a 3-pronged approach to the new overhaul and when it will be discussed. The actual gear is only today. Next week is the recalibration stat storing and skill power refactorization after next week's state of the game, which they are now calling skill tiers. Remember that these things are not coming until there is more content to play and a new power cap, not refarming to get the status quo. They identified that it's difficult to get rid of stuff because of stat storing and they want to change that behavior. It currently takes away the satisfaction that when you pick up a piece of gear, it's unclear if it's really good gear. They want to fix that so you know for sure the loot you pick up is something you know you will use or sell and deconstruct. God rolls in the Division 2 are too rare to find. I'm almost 700 hours in and I still haven't found a 55% damage to elites mask. But since they're getting rid of damage to elites, it won't matter by the time this comes out for me. But still, it's that bad with God rolls. There are too many hybrid builds instead of roles like DPS, healer, tank, and so forth, like the community wanted to begin with. There's no real interesting trade-offs where your build is niche and unique. The stat system used to be one high roll. The rest are always going to be lower. That's going away now. A new skill tier like the Division 1, which they will talk about next week. Looks like 6 tiers of skill power, but I will elaborate on this further in the video. Recal is next week, but I think they're trying to say you will be able to fully recalibrate one attribute but still can only recalibrate one attribute at a time, meaning recalibrate the item to a God rolled stat without having the attribute stashed away, but this is just my speculation. This next one is big. Backpack and chest pieces are where the talents will go now, and only these 2 gear pieces. They're taking away the talents on the rest of the gear pieces, including your mask, holster, gloves, knee pads. No talents on any of those anymore. There are new talents as well now. I don't know exactly how many, but in this photo right here, there are several new ones. 3 to be exact in this one. There will be a weapon base damage stat in the UI now, so we all can see the highest base damage that weapon has to offer, which is great. Alright, next up. They finally elaborated on what happens to our gear when these changes come into effect after episode 3. The gear you farm now will be converted to the new gear system. Some stats won't be exactly the same. Talents from our masks, holster, gloves, and knee pads will go away, and some stuff that will be added. I'm assuming because these talents can greatly increase our stats, and that our current gear will be completely usable and useful after the loot overhaul. They're going to try, but didn't say for sure this would happen, is maybe put some of the talents on the chest and backpack, as those will be the only gear pieces that can have talents after this. Looking at the photo here, Overlord Ornaments is redone to 10% rifle damage, 10% headshot damage, and 10% weapon handling. They have reworked all or most of the high-end 3-piece items as well as gear sets, which I will talk about pretty soon here. Next up, build defining talents. There is no longer requirements for talents, like composure needs 11 or more red attributes. This is no longer the case. Speaking again of composure, which has 10% total weapon damage while you're in cover, now that is also multiplied to your stats on your gear, like weapon damage. Other talents will work this way as well, which is awesome. I always dislike the requirements for talents. The talent on this photo, Empathetic Resolve, will work solo as well. For skill power, we now have skill tiers. Looks like 6 tiers of skill power in the screenshot right here. And you build around your skill tier on that specific gear item. More on the skill tiers next week though, and they will be highlighted in yellow at the top for better readability. So if you're not a skill power player, you know this is seller deconstruct and vice versa. Mods will only roll 1 stat now, and there will be fewer mod slots than before. And the mod will have a stat budget bar as well to know if it is a god rolled mod or not. This right here is a developer solo DPS build. The little orange color on each gear piece indicates how many god rolls you have on that gear piece. It is at the bottom of each gear piece on the first part of your inventory screen as shown. Another new talent, Glass Cannon, in this photo. Looks amazing. Once again, we see another new talent here, Obliterate, which looks amazing as well. And Fenris has changed to a DPS set, but better suited to a DPS player. Exotics and weapons have been reworked around this loot overhaul as well. I had to rewind this certain part of the state of the game a couple times to make this clear. Frederick Thylander said everything, including talents on exotic gear pieces, have been revisited. I'm not expecting a nerf, but something just as good or better since they have been working on this loot overhaul for such a long time. Up next, gear sets. They've made them much more useful, such as this photo right here for hardwired. Feedback loop has been changed to just using or canceling a skill, which will refresh your other skill instead of the skill needing to kill an enemy. Plus the 2, 3, and 4 piece are all about skill haste, skill damage, and skill repair. Awesome. They are being reworked, more fun, more powerful, and more diversity with 2, 3, and 4 piece builds. The chest and backpack have enhancing talents like shown. Feedback loop circuit increases feedback loop by 40% more. This is intentional because you are sacrificing 2 other gear pieces or more, so it gives you more of an incentive to wear all 6, just like the Division 1, where we all wore 6 pieces of a classified set. And I believe this is what they are going for, looking back at the Division 1 and also what new they can do with the loot overhaul on the Division 2. And finally, I've mentioned it before, DTE, damage to elites, is being removed in the loot overhaul as well. That stat will be converted to something else you can recalibrate again when the patch is installed. They want damage to red, purple, and elite enemies, not just elites only, which is huge. I love that. That's a great concept. This worked in the Division 1 because when you got to challenging or heroic or legendary, it was basically all elites. It's not this way in the Division 2. And once again, this loot overhaul or Gear 2.0 comes out after Episode 3. And Episode 3 has a release date for February, but no exact date. Next up, they're taking out the extreme nature of the RPG elements in this game and just making it better and more gratifying. That way you can use critical thinking to make a good to God rolled build the way you want it without having to Google builds and figure out what you need on certain pieces and so on, and making it a much more convoluted and obscure system. With an agent like myself, who after nearly 700 hours of gameplay has still not found a god roll damage to elites on any mask, this is great news to me, and I'm sure plenty of other agents as well. And for solo players like myself, they have also reworked talent so that solo players can have a great God rolled build as well. A few months ago, they have spoken with ETF, Twitch, and YouTube streamers and content creators, as well as people and agents on Twitter and Reddit to help with rebuilding the loot overhaul system. So how does this affect loot tables and drops? We will not be getting a swarm of spammed loot anymore. What they want is less loot drops, but the majority of those loot drops are super interesting and useful. They admit that the majority of the loot we pick up is garbage used to store for an attribute if it's better than the current one, or sell or deconstruct. Alright guys, to wrap things up, we got a developer interview about named gear and weapons, and an interview from a senior game designer. These are minor, but here they are. Because of the massive loot overhaul, they have had to look more carefully at making new named items. They will be nearly doubling the number of existing weapons and gear, and that there is always more coming, and that's named weapons and gear. The senior developer covers the nest control point and how it's bugged to where either the allies won't show up or the enemies are not there, which I have encountered twice myself. This is caused by all nearby settlements and or control points taken over, so the allies do not get the signal. The range of the flare gun sign is around 1 kilometer. If this is happening to you, look around the map and see if there is a settlement blockade or a control point taken over in a 1 kilometer range. But ultimately, the nest control point has the fewest allies that can help it over any other control point in the game. Well, agents, that's it for the state of the game recap. Some really big news on the whole loot overhaul system, and I love it, and I can't wait for it. This will be a big game changer since it is coming after episode 3, which is coming out in February, and hopefully in the beginning of February. So we will have new content to play, as well as min-maxing our builds, and I'm so happy to hear damage to elites rolls are gone. Recalibration is the topic for next week's State of the Game, and I will be covering that as well. Thanks for watching Shadow Gaming. Hit that like, comment, share, subscribe buttons, and I will see you guys next time.